The stall warning screamed. Sarah's world flipped. Sky became rock, rock became sky. Metal shrieked as the rotor blades chewed into the cliff face. Then impact. Blackness. She woke upside down, strapped into the pilot's seat. Blood dripped into her left eye. The windscreen was a spiderweb of cracks, framing white. Just white. Snow and sky merged into nothing. "Mac!" Her voice cracked. "Mac, respond!" Silence. No, not silence. Wind, howling through torn metal. She twisted against the harness, pain flaring in her shoulder. Through the shattered side window she saw it. A blood trail. Dark red against virgin snow, leading away from the wreckage. And below, in the valley, figures. Small, moving uphill, toward her. Sarah's hand found the radio. Smashed. The GPS mount, empty, torn away. She keyed her helmet mic anyway. Static, just static. They'd left her. Left them both. In Taliban country. In a blizzard. With no way home. "20 minutes before the mountain tried to kill her, Captain Sarah Vance had been bored. The Black Hawk thrummed beneath her, steady as a heartbeat pulsing through the cyclic stick. The collective, the anti-torque pedals. Through the night vision goggles, everything glowed green. The Hindu Kush valleys threading below like ancient scars. The snow-capped ridges sharp as broken teeth. The ribbon of river far below that marked the invisible border between ours and theirs. Fourth night flight this week. Same route, same altitude, same procedural bullshit that made combat flying feel like driving a bus route. Charlie 39er, this is Hawk 2-1, 5 mics out from pickup zone Delta, Sarah transmitted, her voice carrying that flat professional tone that came after 300 combat hours, after enough close calls that adrenaline became just another item on the pre-flight checklist. The kind of voice that said, "I've done this 1,000 times, and I'll do it 1,000 more. Copy Hawk 2-1, assets are green and waiting. Weather's turning though, blizzard inbound from the north. ETA 30 minutes, make it quick." The TOC controller sounded tired, his words clipped and mechanical. Everyone was tired in year 14 of this war. Tired of the missions, tired of the mountains, tired of pretending there was an end in sight. Sarah glanced right through the green glow of the cockpit. In the crew chief's seat, Master Sergeant Thomas Mac McAllister gave her a thumbs up, his gloved hand steady despite the vibration. Even through the helmet and visor, she could see his gray beard. The crow's feet around his eyes that mapped 30 years of military service like topographic lines. 58 years old and still flying combat missions. Still volunteering for the shit runs into Indian country because, as he always said, someone's got to keep you kids alive, and God knows you don't know how to do it yourselves. "You good, old man?" Sarah asked over the internal comms, keeping her scan going. Instruments, horizon, instruments, horizon, the eternal cycle of pilot attention. "Old man," Mac's laugh crackled through the intercom system, warm and familiar. "I was pulling pilots out of burning birds before you were born, Valkyrie. Show some damn respect for your elders." "Respect this." Sarah pushed the cyclic forward and dropped the collective. The Black Hawk's nose dipped sharply, and they dropped 300 feet in 5 seconds, her stomach rising into her throat in that beautiful moment of controlled falling. In the back, she heard the 2 door gunners, Sergeant Mitchell and Corporal Hayes, whoop with adrenaline junkie enthusiasm. "Christ, Sarah!" But Mac was grinning. She could hear it in his voice, that edge of exhilaration that never quite died, no matter how many times you'd felt it. This was good. This was right. Cold mountain air flowing through the cabin vents, clear mission parameters, solid crew around her. A spec ops team waiting on the ground, probably freezing their asses off after 2 weeks deep in hostile territory, living on energy bars and hate. Hawk 2-1 would swoop in low and fast, Load up 8 quiet professionals with too much facial hair and not enough sleep. Fly them home to hot showers and real food. Sarah and her crew would be back at Bagram Air Base by 0600. Eggs and coffee in the DFAC. Maybe even a shower that didn't smell like diesel exhaust and broken dreams. The mountain ridge rose ahead, a black knife edge cutting across the starfield. Sarah pulled collective, adding power, gaining altitude to clear the saddle. Standard approach to PZ Delta. Use the terrain to mask their radar signature. Drop into the valley from the north, where the Taliban didn't have observation posts. Land for exactly 90 seconds, load, and go. They'd run this profile 16 times in the last month. Routine, safe as any combat mission could be. Sarah checked her instruments. Airspeed 120 knots. Altitude 1,500 feet, AGL. Engine temps nominal. Fuel sufficient for mission plus 30-minute reserve. Everything green, everything perfect. 2 minutes, she called to Mac. Roger, Mitchell, Hayes, prep the cabin. 60-second turnaround, people. Let's make it smooth. Behind Sarah, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. She heard the metallic clicks of safety harness releases, the solid chunk of ammunition cans being positioned, the whisper of hydraulics as the door gunners test-traversed their M240. This crew had flown together for 11 months. They knew each other's rhythms, knew each other's voices, knew how to work in the dark without words. Sarah thought about her apartment back at Campbell. The empty refrigerator, the stack of unread mail, the silence that greeted her every time she came home from deployment. She thought about Mac's kids, Lisa at UVA studying pre-med, Mike in the Navy somewhere in the Pacific. She thought about Mitchell's wife, who was pregnant with their first. She thought about Hayes, who just turned 22 last week and still looked like he should be playing high school football. She thought about all the things that would be waiting for them when they got home. She didn't think about dying. You never thought about dying, not on routine missions, not when everything was going exactly according to plan. The ridge rose to meet them. Sarah pulled more collective, felt the Black Hawks surge upward, rotors biting cold air, turbines singing their high-pitched song of controlled power. They crested the saddle with 100 feet to spare. The valley opened below, dark, empty, perfect. 1 minute to PZ Delta, Sarah transmitted. Mitchell, Hayes, eyes open, could be. The world exploded. The RPG came from the right side cliff face, launched from a position that shouldn't have existed, from terrain that their intelligence brief had marked as unlikely approach vector. Intelligence had been wrong. Sarah saw it, just a flicker of orange fire against black rock, a contrail of smoke drawing a line through her NVGs. And her hands were already moving, operating on instinct and training and 300 hours of muscle memory. Left pedal hard, drop collective, nose down, kick the tail. The Black Hawk twisted like a living thing, trying to slip the shot, trying to trade altitude for lateral movement. Not fast enough. Never fast enough. Physics was physics, and rockets moved at 700 feet per second, and helicopters did not. The warhead hit the tail rotor pylon. The explosion wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic like the movies, just a sharp crack, like a massive tree branch snapping under snow load, followed immediately by the wrongness. The vibration that said something critical had broken. The yaw that said the anti-torque system was gone. The stomach-dropping sensation of an aircraft no longer fully under control. Tail rotor failure. Mac's voice cut through everything, all business now, every syllable clipped and precise. We're in auto rotation. Brace for emergency landing. Sarah was already there, already executing the procedures that had been drilled into her brain until they were faster than thought. Collective down, remove power from the main rotor, let it windmill freely to maintain some control. Cyclic forward, gain airspeed, trade altitude for forward velocity. Pedals, useless now, the tail rotor was gone or damaged beyond function. But her feet stayed on them anyway, trying to maintain some semblance of directional control as the fuselage started to spin. But there was no flat spot. The briefing had been clear. PZ Delta was the only flat ground for 10 clicks in any direction. Everything else was cliff and rock and snow and absolutely nowhere to put down a 20,000-pound aircraft that was currently falling out of the sky. The Black Hawk spun. Once. Twice. The world through Sarah's NVGs became a smear of green and black. Horizon line meaningless. Up and down suggestions rather than facts. Brace, brace, brace! Sarah's voice was automatic, disconnected from the terror screaming in her hindbrain. Her hands moved on their own, trying to level the nose, trying to find airspeed, trying to do something, anything, to make this survivable. The skids hit first. Not ground, rock. The impact traveled up through the airframe like a shockwave, twisting metal, breaking welds. The skids tore away completely, ripped off by terrain that didn't care about crashworthiness ratings or energy-absorbing landing gear. The fuselage bounced, actually bounced, 20,000 pounds of aircraft and crew and fuel, leaving the ground for one absurd moment, then slammed sideways into the mountainside. Sarah's world became noise, metal screaming, turbines winding down in protest, something in the tail section exploding as ammunition cooked off in the fires already starting. Then the main rotor hit solid rock. The Black Hawk cartwheeled. Sarah's helmet cracked against the doorframe with enough force to split the Kevlar shell. Her shoulder harness bit deep, probably broke something. Collarbone, ribs, she couldn't tell, and it didn't matter. The straps held. That was all that mattered. The straps held, and she stayed inside the aircraft instead of being thrown clear into the rocks. The world was all noise and spinning and pain, in the green glow of NVGs that showed everything and nothing. She had time to think. This is it. This is how it ends. Not in a firefight, not in a moment of heroism, just physics and bad luck and a routine mission gone wrong. She had time to think, I'm sorry, Mac. Then blackness took her, and for a while there was nothing at all. The cold woke her, dragged her back from unconsciousness with cruel efficiency. Not gentle cold, not the, oh, it's chilly, better grab a jacket, cold of autumn mornings. The kind of cold that burned like fire, that made her jaw clench involuntarily, that seized her lungs when she tried to gasp, and filled them with air so frigid it felt like glass shards. Sarah opened her eyes, closed them against the pane, opened them again, forcing her vision to focus through the spiderweb cracks in her visor. Still upside down, still strapped into the pilot seat, the angle was wrong. She was hanging almost vertical, the Black Hawk's nose buried deep in snow and rock, tail section canted up at a 45-degree angle against the cliff face. Through the fractured windscreen, she could see white. Just endless, featureless white. Snow and sky had merged into a single, unified nothing. Her head pounded with the mother of all headaches, the kind that suggested concussion at minimum. Something wet ran down her forehead, flowed into her left eye, burned. She reached up, no, down. Gravity was wrong and confused, and touched her face above the eyebrow. Her glove came away dark, even in the dim light. Blood. Lots of it. Scalp wounds always bled like hell, she knew that, but the quantity was alarming. Mac. Her voice came out as a croak, barely audible even to herself. She tried again, forcing volume. Mac. No answer. The radio. She needed the radio. Needed to transmit emergency. Needed to call for QRF. Needed to do something other than hang here like a broken toy. Sarah fumbled for the control panel, but half of it was crushed inward, a mass of torn wires and shattered screens and bent metal. The GPS display was dark, probably ripped away entirely during the cartwheels. Both radios, UHF and VHF, were smashed, their faces caved in, their guts hanging out like electronic entrails. She toggled the emergency beacon switch anyway, hoping against hope. Nothing. No light, no tone, no reassuring beep that said help was on the way. Fuck. The word felt inadequate. She tried another. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Still inadequate, but it helped somehow. Okay, first things first. Establish priorities. 1. Get out of the seat before you pass out from hanging upside down. 2. Find crew. 3. Establish defensive position. 4. Signal for rescue. She'd been through survival, evasion, resistance, escape training. She knew the priorities, knew what to do when everything went sideways. Except SEER School had never covered what to do when your entire chain of command might have set you up to die. She pushed that thought away. Deal with it later. Survive first. Questions second. Sarah reached up, down, gravity, and found the harness release. 4-point buckle, standard issue, designed to release under stress. She pressed the center mechanism. Nothing. Jammed. She pressed harder, pain shooting through her shoulder like someone had jammed a hot knife into the joint. The buckle gave suddenly. She fell. Only 2 feet straight down onto the crushed center console, but it felt like 20. Her shoulder screamed, definitely separated, maybe fractured clavicle. Combat first aid training kicked in automatically. Check for arterial bleeding, check for head trauma, check for spinal injury, get to cover, establish security. But first, Mac. She had to find Mac. Sarah crawled toward the crew door, every movement sending fresh waves of pain through her shoulder. The door was jammed, bent into the frame by impact forces, its windows shattered and gone. She braced her boots against the pilot's seat and pulled with her good arm. The door shrieked in protest but moved. 6 inches. 12. Enough to squeeze through. She pulled herself through the gap into hell made of ice and wind. The wind hit her like a physical blow, 40 knots easy, gusting higher, carrying snow horizontal like tiny frozen bullets. The blizzard the talk had mentioned wasn't inbound anymore. It was here. It had arrived. And it was trying to kill her just as surely as the RPG had. The Black Hawk was destroyed. Completely, utterly destroyed. The tail boom had sheared off during one of the cartwheels, lay 30 feet away in the snow like the corpse of some mechanical dragon. The main rotor was gone. No, there, one blade jutting from the cliff face 50 feet up like a cross marking a grave. The fuselage was crumpled, accordion style, canted at a 40-degree angle, half buried in snow. Small fires still burned in the engine compartment, sputtering and hissing in the wind, filling the air with the stench of burning JP-8 and melted plastic and things that shouldn't burn. "Mac!" Sarah screamed it into the storm, her voice immediately ripped away by the wind. "Thomas McAllister!" Nothing. Just wind. Just the hiss of snow on metal. Just the distant crack of something in the wreckage giving way under stress. Then movement. There, 20 yards downslope from the crash site, a dark shape against virgin white. Sarah ran, slipped in the snow, fell hard on her bad shoulder, gasped at the pain, got up, ran again. Her boots broke through the snow crust with every step, sinking to mid-calf, making every stride a battle against the mountain itself. The shape resolved as she got closer. A body in a flight suit, half buried in snow, motionless. Mac's flight suit. "No, no, no, no." The words came out as a chant, a prayer, a denial of reality. Sarah dropped beside him, ripped off her glove with her teeth, pressed her bare fingers to his neck. Skin cold, too cold, but there, pulse. Weak, thready, irregular, but there. "Mac, Mac, stay with me." She shook him, perhaps too roughly, but gentleness wouldn't save him. His head lolled. Behind the visor of his helmet, his eyes were closed. "Don't you fucking dare, don't you?" His eyes opened, unfocused. Pupils different sizes, concussion, possibly worse. "Sarah?" A whisper, barely audible over the wind. "Sarah, that you?" Yeah, it's me. I've got you." Lies. She had nothing. She had a crashed helicopter in a blizzard, and Taliban probably already moving toward their position. But she said it anyway because that's what you did. You lied and pretended you had control when everything was chaos. Can't, can't feel my leg." Sarah looked down and her stomach dropped. Mac's left leg was wrong. Very, catastrophically wrong. Bent at an angle between the knee and ankle that legs were never designed to accommodate. The bone, oh God, the bone, had torn through the flight suit, a jagged white spike protruding through olive drab nomex in flesh and blood. Compound fracture, probably shattered tibia and fibula both. The kind of injury that required a surgeon and an operating room and months of recovery. The kind of injury that killed you if you didn't get help fast. That's okay, that's the shock. That's just your body protecting you. More lies. Beautiful, necessary lies. "I'm going to fix it." She couldn't fix it. Nobody could fix it out here. But she could try. She could do something. Doing something was better than doing nothing. Sarah unclipped her trauma kit from her vest with shaking hands. The kit was designed for this: combat injuries, field medicine, keeping someone alive long enough to reach real medical care. She tore it open. Gauze, pressure bandages, morphine auto-injector, tourniquet. Not enough, never enough, but all she had. She worked fast, operating on training and adrenaline and the desperate need to do something useful. Packed the wound with gauze, trying not to look at the bone, trying not to think about the fact that she was probably causing more damage. Wrapped it tight with pressure bandages. Max screamed when she straightened the leg, trying to return it to something resembling a natural position. The sound cut through the wind, raw and animal and full of pain that morphine couldn't touch yet. She gave him the morphine. The whole auto-injector, pressed against his thigh, 15 milligrams of temporary salvation. Probably too much for someone his age with his body weight, but fuck it, pain could kill just as surely as the cold or the injury. Okay, we're good, Sarah started to say something reassuring, something hopeful, when a sound behind her made her hand drop to her holster. Movement in the snow. Another body. 10 feet away, half covered in fresh powder. Sarah pulled her M9, raised it in a two-handed grip despite her screaming shoulder. Approached the shape. Not Mac. Not one of her door gunners. Different uniform. She could see the tactical vest, the Pacol hat dusted with snow, the AK-47 half buried in the drift beside him. Taliban. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger, but the man didn't move. She rolled him over with her boot, keeping the pistol trained on his center mass. Young, maybe 20 if that. Dead, his chest was caved in, probably hit by debris from the explosion or thrown into a rock during the chaos. Already cooling in the snow. She should have felt relief, should have felt satisfaction. One less enemy to fight. Instead, she just felt tired. Then she saw his vest, saw the pockets, saw something laminated sticking out. Sarah knelt, kept the M9 in her right hand, used her left to search the body. Found a radio, cheap Chinese model, smashed beyond repair. Found ammunition, 7.62 by 39 millimeters, wrong caliber for her pistol. Found a map. She unfolded it with numb fingers, stared at it, felt something cold and terrible settle into her stomach. It was a standard Soviet-era topographic map of the Hindu Kush, probably bought off a corrupt Afghan National Army supply sergeant for a few dollars. The kind that showed up in every Taliban fighter's kit. Worn edges, grease stains, nothing unusual. Except someone had drawn on it with red marker. Someone had marked a flight path. Her flight path. Sarah traced the line with her finger, her breath coming faster. There, Bagram Air Base, marked with a circle. The route north, following the valley floor, marked with a dashed line. The ridge, marked with an X. PZ Delta, marked with another X and a note in Pashto that she couldn't read but could guess the meaning of. And more. Time hacks. Written in military format, 2330Z, 2345Z, 0000Z, marking when she'd depart, when she'd reach the ridge. When she'd arrive at the pickup zone, they'd known. The Taliban had known exactly where she'd be, exactly when, had positioned their RPG team perfectly, high ground, clear line of sight, escape route planned and marked. This wasn't opportunistic. This wasn't lucky. This wasn't random chance. This was intelligence. Someone had told them. Someone with access to flight plans and mission timing and route information. Someone on her side. Sarah's hands shook. She looked back at Mac, unconscious in the snow, his face pale with shock and blood loss. Looked at the burning wreckage of her Black Hawk. Looked down the mountain at the figures. She could see them now through the thinning snow. 8, maybe 10 fighters, moving uphill, toward the crash site, toward her. The radio was gone. The beacon was gone. The Black Hawk was a smoking ruin. And somewhere, someone in her chain of command had sold them out, had given the Taliban everything they needed to shoot her down, had sent her on a mission that was designed to fail. No, not designed to fail. Designed to draw attention. Designed to be bait. She thought about the briefing, the Spec Ops team they were supposed to extract. 2 weeks deep in Indian country, high-value target, classified package. All the usual buzzwords that meant, above your pay grade, just fly the mission. What if there was no Spec Ops team at PZ Delta? What if the whole thing was theater? A show for the Taliban to watch while the real mission happened somewhere else? What if Sarah and her crew had been sent here to die? Not to extract anyone, not to accomplish anything, just to be seen, just to be targets, just to be sacrificial pieces on a board, being moved by people who saw soldiers as statistics instead of human beings. Well, Sarah muttered, her voice hollow. Fuck. She looked down the mountain. The Taliban were closer now. She could hear voices calling back and forth in Pashto. They'd be here in minutes. And she had one sidearm, 15 rounds in the magazine, one spare mag, a trauma kit that was already used up, and a crew chief who couldn't walk. The mission had been a lie. The intelligence had been compromised. No, not compromised, deliberately fed to the enemy. The rescue that should have been automatic, that should have been launching from Bagram right now, probably wasn't coming. Why would it? If this was all theater, if they were just bait, then the show was over. Mission accomplished. One Black Hawk down, crew expendable, price of doing business in the war on terror. Sarah grabbed Mac under the arms and started dragging him uphill, toward the cliff face, toward anything that might provide cover. Her shoulders screamed with every pull. Behind them, the voices of the Taliban fighters grew louder, more excited. They'd found the wreckage. They'd be searching for survivors, and they'd find them. The mountain had tried to kill her when the RPG hit, had tried to kill her when the Black Hawk crashed, was trying to kill her now with the cold and the wind, and the Taliban climbing toward her position. The mountain was going to learn something. Sarah Vance didn't die easy. She'd been sent here as bait. Fine. But bait could bite back. The voices grew louder. Sarah pulled Mac behind an outcrop of rock, checked her M9, chambered around, looked at the blood trail they'd left in the snow. No way to hide it, no way to conceal their position. So she wouldn't hide. She'd wait. She'd ambush. She'd kill every last one of these fuckers who thought she'd be easy prey. And then, if she survived, if Mac survived, if they somehow made it through this nightmare, she'd find the person who'd sent them here, the person who'd drawn the map, the person who'd decided that 4 American lives were an acceptable sacrifice for whatever operation was more important than her crew. She'd find them, and they'd answer for this. But first, she had to survive the next 5 minutes. Sarah settled into a firing position behind the rock, controlled her breathing, Watched the Taliban fighters move through the wreckage. Waited. The mountain wanted her dead. The enemy wanted her dead. Maybe her own command wanted her dead. None of them were going to get their wish. Not today. Not if she had anything to say about it. She heard Mac groan behind her. Checked him without taking her eyes off the approaching fighters. Still alive. Still breathing. Good enough. "Hang on, old man," she whispered. "I'm about to make a lot of noise. It's going to be a really bad day for some people. Just not us." Mac's hand reached out, grabbed her ankle. "Sarah, save it. You can thank me later." "Sarah, I'm sorry." "For what?" "For getting you into this." His voice was weak, fading. Should have seen it coming. The mission, too clean, too perfect. Should have. "Mac, shut up and stay alive. That's an order." "Roger that, Captain." The first Taliban fighter reached the blood trail. Pointed. The others gathered around, 8 of them. All armed, all moving toward her position. Sarah put her finger on the trigger. Steady, calm, ready. The mountain could wait. She had work to do. The cave wasn't much, just a crack in the cliff face, barely wide enough to fit 2 bodies side by side. But it was deep enough to get them out of the direct wind, out of the line of sight from the valley below. And right now, that was the difference between living through the next hour and freezing to death in the open. Sarah dragged Mac inside, inch by brutal inch. Every pull sent lightning up her shoulder, down her spine, through her chest. The separation was definitely getting worse. She could feel the joint moving in ways joints weren't meant to move. Could feel bone grating against bone in a sensation that made her teeth hurt. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Down the slope, maybe 300 yards away through the swirling snow, she could see lights. Flashlights. Tactical lights mounted on AK-47s. The Taliban were searching the wreckage, pulling at debris, looking for bodies, looking for weapons, looking for anything valuable, looking for survivors. "Almost there, almost." Sarah grunted, pulled one more time. Mac's boots cleared the cave entrance. She collapsed against the rock wall, breathing hard, each breath visible in the frigid air, each exhalation a small cloud of white that dissipated instantly in the darkness. She pulled a chem light from her vest, cracked it, shook it. Green glow filled the small space, revealing rough walls of ancient limestone, a floor of loose rock and ice, and, she checked carefully, no other exits. That was bad. No escape route meant they were trapped if the Taliban found them. But it was also good. Only one entrance to defend. Only one angle to worry about. Mac groaned. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, rolling. Concussion symptoms getting worse, or maybe hypothermia starting to set in. Or maybe both. Probably both. "Stay quiet," Sarah whispered, moving to check his leg. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. The pressure bandage was already soaked through, dark and wet. She added more gauze from her kit, her last gauze, and wrapped it tighter, eliciting another groan from Mac. His face was pale, lips taking on a blue tinge. Shock and hypothermia. The 2 killers you couldn't shoot, couldn't fight, could only delay. She needed to warm him, needed fire, needed shelter better than a cave, needed a fucking miracle. What she had was a cave and 30 rounds for her M9. Sarah unzipped her parka with her good hand, then reached over and unzipped Mac's. Layered both over his chest and legs, tucking them in as best she could. Her flight suit would have to be enough for her. It wouldn't be. She knew it wouldn't be. But Mac was critical, and she wasn't. And triage was triage, even when you were treating yourself. "Sarah," Mac's voice was barely audible, each word an effort. "Radio? Broken, smashed in the crash. Beacon? Dead, everything's dead. QRF, Quick Reaction Force, the cavalry, the guys who were supposed to launch the moment an aircraft went down, the safety net that was supposed to catch you when everything went wrong." Sarah didn't answer immediately. Mac read it in her silence, in the way she couldn't meet his eyes. Ah, well, shit. He tried to smile. It came out as more of a grimace, pain and cold fighting for control of his face. Guess we're doing this the hard way. The hard way is my specialty, Sarah said, moving to the cave mouth, staying low, peering out into the blizzard. I excel at the hard way. That's what she said. Despite everything, the pain, the cold, the terror, the betrayal, Sarah almost laughed. You're delirious. Been delirious since I met you. The Taliban had reached the wreckage now. She counted 8 fighters, maybe 9, hard to tell through the snow. They were spreading out in a tactical search pattern, professional and methodical. Former Afghan army probably, maybe even trained by American advisors, which meant they'd know American tactics, American procedures, American weak points. One of them shouted, pointed at the ground, at the blood trail, at the drag marks leading uphill, toward the cave, toward them. Mac, I need you to stay quiet and stay still. Can you do that? Where are you going? To make sure they regret getting out of bed this morning. She checked her M9, 14 rounds in the mag, 1 in the chamber, 15 total. 1 spare mag on her belt, 15 more. 30 rounds against 9 fighters with automatic weapons and home field advantage. Even odds, really. She'd faced worse. No, she hadn't, but pretending she had made it easier. Sarah pulled her parka hood up. Wait, no, she'd given the parka to Mac. Just her flight suit then. She grabbed a handful of snow, rubbed it on her face and hands. Camouflage. Broke up the outline. Made her part of the environment instead of standing out against it. Then she slipped out of the cave into the teeth of the blizzard, into the white hell that was trying to kill her almost as hard as the Taliban were. The trick to moving in snow, to not leaving tracks that screamed, "Here I am, come kill me," was patience. Small steps, slow steps. Let the wind cover your noise. Let the falling snow fill your prints. Become part of the storm. Become invisible. Sarah had learned that in Alaska during survival school, a miserable week 3 exercise called winter warfare. The instructors, all of them special forces or ranger qualified sadists who seemed to genuinely enjoy watching students suffer, had made them hunt each other in whiteout conditions. 4 days of freezing, stalking, playing predator and prey in terrain that wanted you dead almost as much as your opponent did. She'd hated every minute of it, had written in her after-action review that the training was unnecessarily brutal and possibly unsafe. Now, as she ghost-walked through the snow with Taliban fighters 50 yards away and death waiting around every rock, she blessed every minute of that training. Blessed every instructor who'd made her do it again when she'd failed. Blessed the cold and the misery that had taught her how to be invisible. She moved parallel to the slope, staying low, using rocks and snowdrifts for cover. The Taliban fighters were focused on the blood trail, on the obvious path that led toward the cave. 3 of them were moving uphill, weapons up, communicating with hand signals. The others were still at the wreckage, pulling at debris, looking for weapons and intelligence. Good. Divide their forces. Make them vulnerable. Basic tactics that worked whether you were a fighter pilot or an infantry grunt. Sarah circled right, downwind, letting the storm carry her scent away from them. Found a boulder 50 yards from the wreckage, half buried in a drift. Settled behind it. Waited. Watched. Patience was the weapon now. Patience and cold, and the knowledge that they didn't know she was hunting them. One fighter broke away from the group at the wreckage. Young, maybe 25, carrying an AK with a tactical light duct taped to the barrel in a modification that would have made an armorer weep. He was checking the snow around the crash site, following tracks, probably from when Sarah had first stumbled away from the burning Black Hawk, disoriented and bleeding. The tracks led away from the cave. Good. Keep following them, kid. Keep walking away from where you need to be looking. He walked within 10 feet of her boulder, close enough that she could hear him breathing, could hear the whispered prayer he was muttering under his breath. Young and scared and doing what he'd been told. Probably had a family. Probably had a life he wanted to get back to. Sarah felt nothing. No sympathy, no remorse. He'd participated in shooting down her bird. That made him an enemy. That made him a target. That made him someone who needed to die so she and Mac could live. She waited until he passed, counted 3, rose from behind the boulder in one smooth motion. 3 steps, silent, weight on the balls of her feet. The M9 came up, muzzle to the base of his skull, right where the brainstem met the spine. Quiet, she whispered in Pashto, one of 5 words she knew, or dead. He didn't stay quiet. They never did. Started to turn, started to bring the AK around, started to shout. Sarah pulled the trigger. The suppressed 9mm coughed, not silent. Hollywood lied about suppressors, but quiet enough that the wind swallowed most of it. The fighter dropped. Sarah caught the AK before it hit the ground, before the metal on rock sound could alert the others. She dragged the body behind the boulder, checked the rifle, full magazine, 30 rounds of 7.62 by 39mm. 2 more magazines in his vest, plus a Chinese stick grenade that looked like it had been manufactured sometime during the Korean War, and probably had a 50-50 chance of working. She took it all. Now she had 45 rounds of rifle ammunition, 15 rounds of pistol ammunition, and a grenade that might explode when she wanted it to, or might just fizz like a disappointing firework. Things were looking up. A shout from the wreckage. One of the fighters had noticed their missing comrade, was calling out his name, something that sounded like Ahmad or Mohammed, hard to tell over the wind. Flashlights swept the area. Voices called out in Pashto, questions turning to commands, turning to concern. The group tightened up. 3 of them started moving downhill, toward where she'd taken the first fighter. Tactically sound. Check on your missing man. Establish security. Don't let yourself get picked off one by one. Too late for that, but Sarah appreciated their attempt. Time to leave. She backed away from the boulder, keeping it between herself and the searching fighters. Moved 20 yards. 40. The blizzard was getting worse. Visibility down to maybe 30 feet now. The wind strong enough to make her lean into it just to stay upright. That was good. The storm was on her side. The storm would hide her. The storm would kill her eventually, but it would kill the Taliban too if they stayed out in it long enough. She looped back toward the cave, moving fast now, trusting the storm to cover her noise. Behind her, the shouts grew louder, more urgent. They'd found the body. Now they knew. Now they'd be careful. Good. Careful meant slow. Slow meant she had time. Time to get back to Mac. Time to set up a defensive position. Time to figure out what the hell they were going to do when the Taliban inevitably tracked them to the cave. Sarah slipped back into the cave, breathing hard, her face numb from the cold, her hands shaking as adrenaline started to wear off. Mac's eyes tracked her as she entered, tracked the AK in her hands, tracked the blood on her flight suit, not her blood this time. 1 down, she said, settling into a position at the cave mouth where she could see out but stay mostly in shadow. 8 to go. Math was always my strong suit. She checked the AK, made sure it was ready. How you feeling? Mac coughed. It sounded wet, rattling in his chest. That was new. That was bad. Like I got hit by a mountain. Technically, the mountain hit you. Semantics. Another cough. Sarah, you need to go. Yeah? Go where? Down valley. Find the PZ. The Spec Ops team. They might still be there. Might have comms. Might be able to call for extract. That's 4 clicks. In a blizzard, while Taliban hunt me. And you're supposed to what? Hang out here and freeze? Maybe make some snow angels while you wait? I'm already freezing. And I'm dead weight, literally. He tried to smile, failed. You could make it alone. You're fast. You're smart. You could. Shut up, Mac. Sarah, I said shut up. She kept her eyes on the approach to the cave, on the swirling snow and the shadows that might be rocks, or might be fighters. I didn't drag your ass 300 yards uphill to leave you now. We're both getting out, or neither of us are. That's the deal. That's a shit deal. It's the only deal. She saw movement, raised the AK. False alarm. Just snow falling from an overhang. Now be quiet. Company's coming. She could see lights through the snow. 4 fighters, maybe 5, moving uphill in a tactical line, sweeping the area, following the blood trail that led straight to their position. Smart, persistent, dangerous. Exactly what she didn't need right now. Sarah controlled her breathing. Slow in through the nose, slow out through the mouth. The way they'd taught her at long-range marksmanship school. Not that she'd ever been a designated marksman, but they'd sent all the pilots through a familiarization course. So you know what's possible when someone's shooting at you, the instructor had said. So you know how vulnerable you are from 800 meters away. Right now, Sarah was what was possible. Sarah was the threat. Sarah was the thing that made you vulnerable. The lead fighter was maybe 70 yards away, moving slow, weapon up, checking corners, checking shadows, doing everything right. Former ANA, definitely, maybe even some special forces training, the kind of fighter who survived long enough to become dangerous. She put the AK's front sight post on his chest, breathed, squeezed. The rifle kicked against her shoulder, her bad shoulder, sending fresh pain through the joint. The fighter went down. The others scattered immediately, took cover, returned fire. Rounds sparked off the cliff face, whined past the cave entrance, filled the air with the sound of angry bees and ricochets. Sarah ducked back, counted 3 seconds, leaned out and fired again. 2-round burst, a scream. Someone hit, maybe dead, maybe just wounded, but out of the fight either way. More return fire, a lot more. They were spraying the whole cliff face. Probably couldn't see exactly where she was shooting from, but knew the general area. Bullets chewed into the rock above the cave entrance. Splinters and dust rained down. Sarah pressed herself flat against the back wall. Mac was curled up, arms over his head, making himself as small as possible. The shooting stopped. Tactical reload, probably. Sarah popped out, fired 4 rounds, fast. Suppressive fire. Make them think she had unlimited ammunition. Make them think twice about rushing her position. It worked. The return fire was more careful now. Controlled bursts instead of spray and pray. They were thinking, reevaluating their assault. They'd lost 2 men, maybe 3, against 1 American with a rifle in a defended position. That was a bad trade. That was the kind of trade that got you killed if you kept making it. The Taliban started backing off. 50 yards, 70, disappeared into the snow like ghosts, like they'd never been there at all. But they weren't leaving. Sarah could feel it in her gut. That combat instinct that came from too many missions and too many close calls. They were circling, flanking, looking for another approach. This was just round 1. Round 2 would come soon, and they'd be smarter about it. Nice shooting, Max said. His voice was weaker, slurred. Not good. Alaska, survival school. Those sadistic instructors taught me well. Remind me to buy them a beer when we get home. Remind me to kick their asses for making me freeze in Alaska for a week. Sarah reloaded the AK. 25 rounds left in the current magazine. 2 full spares. 95 rounds total. How you feeling? And don't say fine. Like death. Warmed over, then frozen again. Scale of 1 to 10? 11. He tried to laugh, coughed instead. Blood flecked his lips. Internal bleeding. Jesus Christ. Sarah, listen, you need to know something. Save it, save your strength. No, need to tell you. Before, he coughed again, harder. The mission, the Spec Ops extraction, It wasn't real. Sarah turned from the cave entrance, stared at him. What? Decoy, the whole thing. I saw, I saw the real flight plan. Before they scrubbed it. Before they put us on this mission instead. Mac's eyes were fever bright now, too intense, burning with something that might have been delirium or might have been clarity. We were bait, Sarah. The whole flight. You, me, the crew. Sent here to draw Taliban attention while the real mission happens somewhere else. That's... Sarah's mind raced. The map. The Taliban had known their exact route, their exact timing. Not because of a leak, because someone had fed them the information. Deliberately. That's not possible. Command wouldn't. Command does what wins wars. And sometimes, he coughed, more blood. Sometimes that means losing a Black Hawk. One bird, one crew. Acceptable losses for the bigger picture. The words hit her like a physical blow. Acceptable losses. The phrase that appeared in after-action reports, in briefings, in the cold calculus that turned human beings into statistics. She'd heard it before, had used it herself when discussing enemy casualties. Had never imagined it would apply to her, to Mac, to their crew. They're not coming, Sarah said, speaking the words slowly, feeling each one like a weight. QRF isn't coming. We're not on the rescue list. We're ghosts. Mac's smile had no humor in it, just resignation and bitterness and exhaustion. Already dead, just don't know it yet. The wind howled outside. The Taliban called to each other in the darkness, regrouping, planning their next move. And Sarah held a dying man in a cave and realized with perfect, terrible clarity that they were completely alone. That no one was coming, that whatever happened next, they were on their own. She'd been betrayed by the enemy, expected that, planned for it. She'd been betrayed by the mountain, survived it, barely. But she'd been betrayed by her own command, by the people who were supposed to care whether she lived or died, by the officers who'd sent her on a mission that was designed to fail, designed to get her killed, designed to sacrifice her crew for some larger objective that she'd never know about. That betrayal hurt worse than her shoulder, worse than the cold, worse than anything. She didn't remember making the decision to move, just knew that suddenly she was moving, dragging Mac out of the cave, away from the position that was compromised, that the Taliban knew about, that would become a tomb if they stayed. The blizzard was worse now, visibility down to 10 feet, the cold beyond anything she'd experienced, beyond Alaska, beyond any training scenario, the kind of cold that killed in minutes if you stopped moving, that made your lungs burn with every breath, that turned your extremities numb and useless. Sarah dragged Mac down the slope, using terrain features for concealment, staying low, moving fast. The Taliban saw her. She knew they saw her, heard their shouts, heard the rattle of automatic weapons fire. Bullets kicked up snow around her, whined past her head. She didn't stop, couldn't stop, just pulled and moved and pulled and moved, Mac's weight behind her like an anchor, like a reminder of why she was doing this. A rocky outcrop appeared through the snow. She pulled Mac behind it, returned fire, changed to her M9, conserving rifle ammunition, fired 3 rounds, pulled, moved. The world became a blur of white and pain and motion. Time stopped meaning anything. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 5 hours. She just moved, just pulled, just survived 1 second at a time because that was all she could do. Then the ground changed, went from rock to ice, smooth ice, river ice. She looked down, realized she'd somehow navigated to the frozen river, the border marker from the flight in. The same river that separated friendly territory from hostile territory, except there was no friendly territory anymore, was there? Just degrees of hostile. If they could cross it, if they could get to the other side, maybe the Taliban would give up. Maybe the ice would slow them down. Maybe... Who was she kidding? There was no other side, just more mountain, more cold, more dying slowly instead of dying quickly. But she pulled anyway. Because that's what you did. You pulled until you couldn't pull anymore. You fought until you couldn't fight anymore. You survived until survival wasn't possible, and then you survived a little longer just to spite the universe. The ice cracked under Mac's weight. Water bubbled up, black and freezing, soaking through his flight suit in seconds. He didn't react. Wasn't reacting to much of anything now. Just dead weight. Just cargo. Just someone she refused to leave behind even though every tactical bone in her body screamed that she should. Sarah pulled him onto the far bank, checked his pulse with numb fingers that barely felt anything. There. Barely there. Thread. Fading. But there. She looked back. The Taliban had stopped at the river. One of them tested the ice. It broke immediately, the crack loud even over the wind. They pulled back, conferring, pointing at different crossing points upstream and downstream. They'd have to go around. That bought her time. Minutes maybe, not much, but something. She looked around, desperate for anything that could help. There, 50 yards away through the blizzard, another cave. Bigger entrance. Deeper. She could barely see it through the snow, but it was there. Option 1, stay here in the open and freeze. Option 2, try to make it to the cave. Neither was good. Both would probably end with her and Mac dead, but option 2 at least had a cave. And caves meant shelter. And shelter meant a chance, however small. Sarah dragged Mac toward it. Her shoulder wasn't screaming anymore. It was past screaming. It was just white noise. Just agony as a constant state that she'd learned to ignore because acknowledging it meant stopping, and stopping meant dying. The cave entrance loomed. She pulled Mac inside, deeper, 20 feet, 30, and at the back, she could see it even in the darkness, even through her exhaustion and pain, an old campfire ring, rocks arranged in a circle, ash and charcoal stained black against stone. Old enough that someone, at some point, had sheltered here. And if someone had sheltered here and survived, then maybe she could too. Sarah laid Mac down, checked him, pulse thread, breathing shallow, skin gray, lips blue. She had minutes, maybe less. Maybe he was already too far gone. Maybe she was just watching him die slowly instead of quickly. No, she wouldn't accept that. Wouldn't let him die. Not after everything. Not after dragging him this far. Not after... Movement at the cave entrance. She spun, raised the AK. Flashlight beams cutting through the darkness. Voices. The Taliban had crossed the river, had found her trail. Were coming. Of course they were. Because nothing could be easy. Because the universe had decided that tonight she got to learn exactly how much she could endure before breaking. Sarah looked at the cave, looked at Mac, looked at the AK with its last magazine and the M9 with its last 15 rounds, looked at her vest, at the road flare clipped to the webbing, standard issue for crash sites, 15 minutes of burn time at 1500 degrees, looked at the grenade in her pocket, the one that might work or might not. An idea formed, a terrible, desperate, probably stupid idea. The kind of idea that came when you had no good options and needed to create one out of nothing. She looked at the old campfire ring, looked at the Taliban approaching, looked at Mac, dying. "Hang on," she whispered. "I'm about to do something really, really stupid. If it works, we live. If it doesn't..." She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Mac knew. Even unconscious, even dying, he knew. Sarah started gathering rocks, started building, started creating something that would either save them or kill them. But at least it would be on her terms. At least she'd go down fighting. The Taliban voices grew louder, closer. Sarah worked faster. The campfire ring became the foundation. Sarah stacked rocks around it with her one good arm, building up the sides, creating walls. Then she grabbed snow from just inside the cave entrance, packed it into the gaps between rocks, creating insulation, creating a crucible, creating a furnace that would burn hot and fast and dangerous. In the center, she placed the road flare, unlit, waiting, the trigger that would start everything. Around the flare, she arranged everything flammable she could find. The empty trauma kit packaging, plastic and cardboard that would burn quick and hot. The laminated map from the dead Taliban fighter. She'd kept it as evidence, but now it was fuel. A piece of her flight suit that she tore off with her teeth, about the size of a handkerchief, soaked with sweat and blood. Kindling, accelerant, everything she needed for fire. And on top, balanced carefully on a flat rock that rested on the pile, the Chinese grenade, pin still in, spoon held down by the weight of the rock. A rock that would heat up when the fire burned. A rock that would eventually get too hot to maintain the friction that held it in place. A rock that would shift, slip, fall, and when it fell, the spoon would fly free. The striker would hit the primer, 4-second fuse, then boom. It would take time. She calculated quickly. Flare ignition to rock heating, maybe 7 minutes, maybe 8. The flare would light, would burn, would heat everything around it. The rock would get hot, expand, lose its grip, slip. 4 seconds later, the grenade would detonate in a confined space, with nowhere for the overpressure to go except outward, toward the cave entrance, toward anyone standing there. It probably wouldn't work. The rock might not heat enough. The grenade might be a dud. The Taliban might see it and kick it outside before it detonated. 100 things could go wrong. But it was the only plan she had. Sarah pulled Mac deeper into the cave, as far back as possible, found a depression in the floor, a natural hollow worn by water over centuries, laid him in it, piled snow and loose rocks around them, creating a barrier. It probably wouldn't stop shrapnel, probably wouldn't protect them from the overpressure, but maybe it would absorb enough to keep them alive. Maybe. Mac, she shook him. His eyes opened, barely. I need you to understand. We're going to get loud, really loud. And when it gets loud, you cover your ears and you keep your mouth open. Okay? Keep your mouth open or the overpressure will blow out your eardrums, rupture your lungs. Loud? His voice was barely a whisper. Stupid loud. Already deaf. You keep screaming at me. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. That's because you're not listening. She moved to the cave entrance. Checked it. The Taliban were close now. Very close. She could see the flashlight beams, maybe 20 yards away through the blizzard. Could hear voices calling to each other. 3 fighters, maybe 4, coming to finish it. Coming to kill the American pilot who'd had the audacity to survive this long. Mac, Thomas. Sarah looked back at him, at the man who'd taught her to fly, who'd been there for her first combat mission, who'd made her a pilot, made her a soldier. I need you to know something. What? I'm not leaving you, whatever happens. Whatever comes through that entrance, I'm not leaving you. It's a bad call, Captain. Yeah, but it's my call. She pulled out the road flare, held it. This was it. The moment. Do it or don't. Live or die. No middle ground. And I'm making it. The Taliban voices were right outside. She could see shadows now, moving through the falling snow. One of them called out in English, broken but understandable, words that had probably worked before on scared Americans. American, we know you here. Come out. We let you live. We treat you good, no harm. Lies, beautiful lies. They'd torture her for intelligence, then kill her. That was the game. That was how it worked. Sarah struck the flare. It ignited with a sharp hiss, burning brilliant red, casting wild shadows on the cave walls. She jammed it into the fire trap, into the center of the kindling pile. The plastic packaging caught immediately. Flames licked up around the grenade. The flat rock began to heat. Then she ran, back to Mac, dropped beside him, pressed herself flat against the cave floor in the hollow. Cover your ears, mouth open. The Taliban saw the light, saw the fire. Sarah heard them react, confusion, then curiosity, then alarm. One of them shouted a warning, but they were coming in anyway, rushing in, because fire meant warmth. Fire meant the American was distracted. Fire meant opportunity. They reached the cave entrance, 3 of them. She could hear their boots on stone, could hear their breathing, could hear them talking as they saw the fire, saw the setup. One of them said something sharp, a warning. He'd seen the grenade, was pointing at it. They started to turn, started to run back toward the entrance. The grenade fell. Sarah saw it happen even with her eyes squeezed shut. Heard the spoon fly off with a metallic snap. Heard it hit the rocks. Heard the fuse. 4 seconds, she screamed, not sure why, not sure who she was warning. Just screaming because it seemed like the thing to do when a grenade was about to go off 10 feet away. The Taliban were trying to get out, trying to run, trying to reach the entrance in safety. They almost made it. The grenade detonated. In the open, a hand grenade is dangerous to 20 meters, lethal to 5. Inside a cave, the laws of physics change. The overpressure has nowhere to go, can't dissipate into open air, reflects off walls, multiplies, compounds, becomes something more than explosion, becomes hammer, becomes God, becomes death in a shockwave. The explosion was white light and thunder that didn't end. The cave shook. The ceiling rained dust and small rocks and things that had been stable for 1,000,000 years, suddenly deciding they didn't want to be stable anymore. Sarah's ears popped, went deaf, came back as ringing that drowned out everything else. Her chest felt crushed, like someone had hit her with a sledgehammer. Mac was screaming, but she couldn't hear it, could just see his mouth open, see his face contorted in pain. She couldn't hear anything except the ringing, high-pitched, eternal, the sound of damage that might be permanent. Then the dust started to settle. The ringing started to fade, and Sarah heard something else, something impossible. A drone, high altitude, the distant whine of a propeller cutting through thin mountain air. And overhead, through the smoke pouring out of the cave entrance, through the disrupted air and the heat signature they just created, they'd made a beacon, a thermal beacon, a signal fire visible from space, from satellites, from any aircraft with an infrared camera pointed in the right direction. Sarah stumbled to the cave entrance, her legs not working quite right, her balance off from the blast. Looked up into the blizzard, saw nothing through the snow, but she could hear it. The MQ-9 Reaper had to be, doing an overwatch pattern, watching the mountains, watching the valleys, watching for anything interesting. And they'd just gotten very interesting. She pulled out her signal mirror, another standard crash kit item that she'd somehow managed to keep, aimed it up toward where she thought the drone was, flashed it, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, SOS. The prayer of the desperate, the cry of the lost, the signal that meant, I'm here, I'm alive, please God, someone help me. The drone's engine note changed, shifted. It had seen, it had registered, it had noticed. Now the question was, did anyone care? Would anyone come? Or were they still ghosts, still expendable, still acceptable losses in someone's bigger picture? Sarah lowered the mirror, went back to check on Mac. He was unconscious, pulse weak, breathing shallow, alive, but barely. She checked the cave entrance. The Taliban fighters were down, all 3 of them, not moving. The overpressure had done its work. She dragged their bodies outside, not out of respect, out of practicality, didn't want to share her cave with corpses, took their weapons, their ammunition, their radios. One radio was still working. She cycled through frequencies, trying to find something, anything. Static. Pashto. More static than SIGINT confirms thermal signature, grid November, Delta 7428, possible friendly, request authentication, over. English, American, someone watching, someone who'd seen their beacon, Someone who might actually give a damn whether they lived or died. Sarah keyed the radio with shaking hands and started to transmit. The radio on the dead Taliban fighter crackled with static, then cleared. Sarah keyed it again, forcing her voice to stay steady despite the adrenaline crash starting to hit. Despite her hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the transmit button. Hawk 2-1 actual to any friendly station. If you can hear me, we are alive. 2 souls, multiple enemy KIA, requesting immediate QRF extraction. Over. Static. Long static that stretched for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Long enough for Sarah to wonder if she'd imagined the English transmission, if her concussion was making her hear things that weren't there, if this was hypothermia-induced delusion. Then, station calling, authenticate with proper codes. Authenticate. Prove you're not Taliban with a stolen radio. Prove you're American. Prove you're worth saving. Standard operational security. Standard procedure. Standard bureaucratic bullshit that might get her killed. I don't have authentication codes, Sarah said, speaking fast, knowing she might only get one chance at this. They were in my kneeboard, which is currently in the wreckage of my Black Hawk, 4 clicks north of my current position. But my name is Captain Sarah Vance, tail number Hawk 2-1, 160 Special Operations Aviation Regiment. We were shot down during a Spec Ops extraction mission at PZ Delta. I am currently grid November Delta 7428 with Master Sergeant Thomas McAllister, crew chief, who is critically wounded and requires immediate medical evacuation. Over. Another pause, longer this time. Sarah could imagine the scene on the other end. Some Air Force officer in a climate-controlled trailer at Bagram or Kandahar, or maybe even Nevada, thousands of miles away, comfortable and safe, checking her name against the database, verifying she existed, confirming her story, making sure this wasn't an elaborate Taliban deception. Hawk 2-1, this is Reaper 6-5. We have visual on your position via thermal imaging. The voice was professional, controlled, revealing nothing. Be advised, QRF is a pause, deliberate, careful, chosen, not available for your location at this time. You are outside approved operating area. Recommend you evade south to grid November Delta 8246 and await further instructions. Over. Sarah stared at the radio. Not available. The words were clinical, professional, couched in military jargon, and utterly, completely final. They meant, you're on your own. They meant, we're not coming. They meant, you're expendable. Mac had been right. The mission had been a lie. The extraction had been theater. And now that the play was over, now that they'd served their purpose as bait, as distraction, as acceptable losses, command had moved on. There was no rescue. There had never been a rescue. They were ghosts. Reaper 6-5, Sarah said, and her voice was steady now, cold now, filled with a rage that burned hotter than any of the fires she'd set tonight. I have a critically wounded soldier who cannot evade. He has a compound fracture of the left leg, probable internal bleeding, advanced hypothermia, and maybe 30 minutes left to live without medical intervention. I am requesting on humanitarian grounds that you task QRF to my location. Over. Hawk 2-1, understand your situation, but negative. The voice remained professional, sympathetic even, but immovable. Command has assessed the risk as unacceptable. Multiple enemy forces in your vicinity. Winter weather conditions degrading. Extraction would require assets we cannot commit at this time. Recommend again that you evade to... Sarah keyed the radio, cut him off mid-sentence. Reaper 6-5, let me ask you a direct question. Am I being left behind because my mission was a decoy? Because someone fed my flight plan to the Taliban? Because my crew was sent here specifically to get shot down and draw enemy attention away from the real operation? Silence. Complete silence. 5 seconds. 10. 15. She'd hit the target. She knew it. The silence told her everything she needed to know. Then, Hawk 2-1, I don't know what you're talking about. But his voice had changed, gotten tighter, more careful. You need to control your transmissions. You're on an open channel. I don't give a fuck about the channel, Sarah was shouting now, all professionalism gone, all military bearing evaporated in the face of betrayal. I don't give a fuck about operational security or proper radio procedures or any of that shit. I give a fuck about my crew chief bleeding out in a cave. I give a fuck about the fact that my command used us as bait and now wants us to conveniently disappear so there are no awkward questions. Well, guess what? I'm not disappearing. I'm not dying quietly for your fucking mission. You send QRF right now, or I walk out of these mountains and I tell every reporter, every congressman, every person who'll listen about what you did, about how you sent 4 Americans to die so your real mission could succeed. I will burn your operation to the ground. Do you understand me? The radio went silent. No response. Sarah waited. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Behind her, Mac groaned. His breathing was getting worse. More labored, more irregular. Time was running out. Come on, Sarah whispered to the radio. Come on, you bastard, respond. 45 seconds. A minute. She was about to transmit again when the radio crackled. Hawk 2-1, Reaper 6-5. The voice was different now, quieter, more human. I'm going to ask you one time to confirm. Are you declaring an emergency situation requiring immediate extraction despite command guidance to the contrary? It was a trap. Sarah knew it was a trap, knew exactly what he was doing. If she said yes, if she insisted, if she forced this, they'd have it on record. Have her refusing orders, jeopardizing operations, putting personal concerns above mission success. Grounds for court-martial, grounds for dishonorable discharge, grounds for destroying everything she'd worked for. If she said no, Mac died. Simple as that. No ambiguity, no question. Mac died and she'd have to live with the fact that she could have saved him, but didn't because she was afraid of the consequences. Sarah looked at Mac, at the man who'd been more than a crew chief, more than a mentor, the man who'd pulled her through flight school when she'd wanted to quit, who'd been there for her first combat mission, talking her through the fear, showing her how to be brave, who'd taught her that being a good pilot meant taking care of your crew first, mission second, yourself last, who'd shown her what it meant to be a soldier. She keyed the radio. Affirmative, Reaper 6-5. I am declaring an emergency situation requiring immediate extraction of 2 souls, regardless of command guidance, operational considerations, or any other factors. I am taking full responsibility for this decision, and if command has a problem with that, they can court-martial me when I get home. But first they have to let me get home. Over. A pause. Then, was that a chuckle? A brief, quiet sound that might have been laughter or might have been static. Copy Hawk 2-1. Stand by for QRF tasking. Another pause. This is going to take a few minutes. I need to explain the situation to some people who are going to be very unhappy with me. But fuck it. You did your job. Survived impossible odds. Killed enemy combatants. Created a goddamn thermal beacon in a blizzard. That deserves a pickup. And Captain? Yeah? Give 'em hell. Make every second count. Reaper 6-5 out. The radio went silent. Sarah stared at it, not quite believing what had just happened. Someone had listened. Someone had cared. Someone had decided that 2 American lives were worth the risk, worth the consequences, worth defying command guidance. She checked her watch, started counting. QRF launch would take 5 minutes minimum. Flight time to her position, another 15 to 20 depending on weather and where they were staging from. She had to hold for maybe 25 minutes total. She had 9 rounds left in the AK, 14 in her M9, against however many Taliban were still out there. 25 minutes. She'd held longer. She'd faced worse. No, she hadn't. But she was going to anyway. The Taliban came at minute 7. Sarah saw them through the cave entrance. More fighters, called in as reinforcements. Maybe 8 or 10 or 12. Hard to count through the snow. They'd learned, weren't rushing, weren't making themselves easy targets. Were moving tactically, using terrain, keeping spacing, communicating with hand signals. Professional, experienced, dangerous. Sarah settled into her firing position at the cave mouth, made herself comfortable. This was going to take a while. "Mac," she said without turning around, "I need you to know something. Help is coming. QRF is inbound. We just need to hold for 20 minutes. No response. She glanced back. Mac was unconscious. Maybe that was better. Maybe it was worse. She didn't know anymore. 20 minutes, she repeated, to herself this time. To the mountain, to the universe. I can do 20 minutes. The first Taliban fighter appeared from behind a boulder, 30 yards away. Sarah put the AK's sights on him, waited until he committed to movement, squeezed. He went down. 8 rounds left. Return fire came immediately, professional, controlled, aimed at the cave entrance. Sarah ducked back, waited 3 seconds, popped out the other side of the entrance, fired twice. Another fighter down or wounded. 6 rounds left. They were learning faster than she was killing them. Started laying down suppressive fire, forcing her to stay behind cover while they advanced. Smart. Effective. Exactly what she'd do in their position. The AK ran dry. Sarah dropped it, pulled her M9. 14 rounds. She'd have to make them count. 2 fighters rushed from the left. Bold, brave, stupid. Sarah stepped into the open, double-tapped both. They dropped. 10 rounds left. She heard engines, motorcycles, more reinforcements coming. This was bad. This was very bad. She couldn't hold against unlimited enemies with 10 rounds. Engines getting louder, headlights cutting through the blizzard, 3 bikes, 2 riders each, 6 more fighters. She couldn't let them reach the cave, couldn't let them get close enough to throw grenades or rush her position. Sarah stepped fully outside the cave, exposed, vulnerable, aimed carefully, shot the lead rider. The motorcycle went down, sliding, taking the passenger with it. 8 rounds left. Shot the second rider. Same result. 6 rounds left. The third motorcycle swerved, tried to retreat. Sarah put her last 6 rounds into it. Rider down. Passenger down. Motorcycle crashed. Empty. The M9's slide locked back. Sarah dropped the magazine, reached for her spare mag. Nothing. She'd lost it. Somewhere during the night, somewhere in the snow and the fighting and the chaos, she was out of ammunition. The surviving Taliban fighters saw it, saw her checking her empty weapon, saw the moment of realization. They started advancing, confident now, knowing they'd won, knowing she had nothing left. Sarah threw the empty M9 at the closest one, pulled her knife. It was a small thing, a folding blade, maybe 3 inches long, designed for cutting cord and opening MREs, not fighting armed men. But it was all she had. The fighters stopped 20 feet from the cave entrance. 8 of them, maybe 9, she'd lost count. They formed a loose semicircle, weapons raised. One of them said something in Pashto, probably, "Drop the knife," or "Surrender," or "You fought well, but it's over." Sarah didn't drop the knife, didn't surrender, didn't move, just stood there, bleeding and freezing, and probably about to die, but standing, still fighting, still refusing to quit. One of the fighters raised his AK, aimed at her chest. His finger moved to the trigger. Sarah tensed, preparing for impact, for pain, for whatever came next. The sound hit first, then the wind. Rotor wash that made the blizzard look like a gentle breeze. So powerful it knocked 2 of the Taliban fighters off their feet. So loud it drowned out everything else. So beautiful Sarah could have cried. Two Blackhawks, no, four, a full flight, coming in low and fast and very, very angry. Door guns blazing, M134 miniguns, 6,000 rounds per minute per gun. The mathematical certainty of violence. The Taliban fighters didn't disintegrate, didn't vanish. That was Hollywood. Real life was messier. They just stopped existing as coherent beings, became parts, became pieces, became things that used to be human but weren't anymore. The first Black Hawk flared hard, landing 30 yards from the cave in a storm of snow and rotor wash. The side door slammed open. A crew chief leaned out waving frantically. "Let's go! Let's go! Move it!" Sarah didn't think. Ran back into the cave, grabbed Mac under the arms, lifted with her legs, with her bad shoulder, with strength she didn't know she still had, dragged him toward the helicopter. 15 yards. 10. Strong hands reached out, grabbed Mac, pulled him aboard, grabbed Sarah, pulled her, into the bird, into safety, into salvation. The Black Hawk lifted before the skids fully settled, banking hard, climbing fast. The other three birds orbited, guns still firing, suppressing anything that moved, anything that might threaten the extraction. Someone was putting a blanket around Sarah. Someone else was working on Mac. IV lines, pressure bandages, oxygen mask, all the combat medicine happening at once. The crew chief was shouting something about, "Most badass pilot I've ever seen," and, "How the fuck are you still alive?" "You're safe," someone yelled over the rotor noise. "You're safe. We've got you." Sarah didn't feel safe, felt numb, felt empty, felt like she'd left something behind in that cave, in that mountain, in that endless night of fighting and dying and refusing to quit. Then she looked out the door, at the Hindu Kush falling away below, at the blizzard still raging, at the Taliban scattered and broken in the snow, at the mountain that had tried so hard to kill her and failed. She'd won, against everything, against the enemy, against the weather, against her own command's betrayal, against the mountain itself. She'd survived. She'd saved Mac. She'd done the impossible. But the victory felt hollow, felt like ashes, because she knew the truth now, knew what command was willing to do, knew what acceptable losses really meant, knew that somewhere, right now, someone was looking at a report that said, "Mission successful," and not thinking about the 4 Americans who'd nearly died to make it happen. The Black Hawk banked toward Bagram, toward medical care, toward safety, toward questions that would need answering, and reports that would need filing, and a reckoning that was coming whether command wanted it or not. Sarah closed her eyes, let the rotor noise wash over her, let herself feel, just for a moment, the relief of being alive. Then she opened her eyes and started planning what came next. The flight to Bagram Air Base took 40 minutes. Sarah didn't remember any of it, just came to when they touched down, when the skids hit the tarmac and the engine started to wind down, and suddenly there were medics everywhere. They tried to take her to the hospital. She refused, pushed past them, walked herself to the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center, bleeding shoulder, frozen hands, flight suit torn and bloody, didn't matter. She had questions. She needed answers. She needed to look someone in the eye and ask them why. The TOC was a blast-hardened building at the center of the base. Sarah walked through the doors like she owned the place, tracked blood and snow across the clean floor, ignored the shocked stares from the staff officers who'd probably never seen combat outside of briefing slides, found the officer in charge, a colonel, gray-haired, tired-looking, sitting at a desk covered in maps and reports and the administrative detritus of running a war. He looked up when she entered. His expression didn't change. "Captain Vance," he said, not a question. He'd been expecting her. "You should be in medical." "I should be dead," Sarah said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat, empty. But I'm not. And you know why I'm not? Because I didn't trust you. Didn't trust the mission. Didn't trust that anyone would come get us. And that lack of trust is the only reason Master Sergeant McAllister is alive right now. The colonel's face remained neutral. Captain, you're in shock. You've been through a traumatic... Was my mission a decoy? Sarah stepped closer. Simple question, simple answer. Was my crew sent to PZ Delta knowing we'd be shot down? Knowing the Taliban would be waiting? Knowing we were bait for a larger operation? That's classified. Was my crew expendable? Every soldier is expendable if the mission requires it. The colonel's voice was flat, matter of fact, like he was discussing logistics instead of lives. That's war, Captain. That's command. You make hard choices and you live with them. You live with them, Sarah said, and felt something break inside, something that had been holding her together. I had to make sure Mac lived through them. I had to drag him through a blizzard, fight 8 Taliban fighters, negotiate with a drone operator who told me QRF wasn't available because we were outside the operating area. So tell me, Colonel, what operating area? The one where you deliberately sent us to get shot down? Or the one where you left us to die because the mission was more important than our lives? The colonel was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked around the desk, looked at her, really looked at her. His eyes were old, tired, full of things he'd seen and done and lived with. You're a good pilot, Captain Vance, he said quietly. One of the best. But you don't understand the bigger picture. Then explain it. I can't. It's above your clearance level. My clearance level got me shot out of the sky. Your clearance level, he paused, chose his words carefully, kept you from knowing that 20 miles south of your position, a special operations team successfully raided a Taliban command post, killed 15 high-value targets, captured intelligence that will save American lives for the next year, prevented 3 planned attacks on coalition forces, disrupted enemy operations in the entire province. They succeeded because the Taliban were distracted by a Black Hawk going down in the Hindu Kush, distracted by a rescue operation that never came, distracted by you. Sarah stared at him, felt the words land like physical blows. So I was bait. You were a soldier, following orders, doing your duty. My duty? Sarah laughed. It sounded broken, hollow. My duty was to fly a mission designed to fail, to get shot down, to maybe die. And if I survived, to realize that my command didn't give a shit whether I lived or died as long as the mission succeeded. Yes, the colonel's voice was soft now, almost gentle. That's exactly your duty. That's what you signed up for when you put on that uniform. You don't get to pick which missions are real and which are bait. You fly. You fight. You trust that someone above you is making the right call. And if they're not, then you still fly. You still fight. Because that's the job. He paused. Captain, you saved Master Sergeant McAllister's life tonight. Against impossible odds. You should be proud. Proud. The word tasted like ashes. I'm not proud, sir. I'm angry. I'm betrayed. And I'm wondering what the fuck I'm fighting for if my own command is willing to sacrifice me for operational success. The colonel didn't answer immediately, just looked at her. And in his eyes she saw something. Recognition, understanding, sympathy even. He'd been there, made those calls, sent people to die for the greater good, lived with it, carried it. Get yourself to medical, Captain, he finally said. That's an order. And Captain? What? You did good tonight. Really good. The kind of good that shouldn't have been necessary, but you did it anyway. That matters. Remember that when you're angry. Remember that you save your crew. Sarah turned to leave, stopped at the door, looked back. Sir, one more question. What? If I died tonight, if Mac had died, would it have mattered? To anyone except the people who knew us? The colonel was quiet for a long time. Then, to the mission? No. To the 15 high-value targets we killed? No. To the future attacks we prevented? No. Another pause. To the men who knew you, to the pilots who flew with you, to the crew chiefs who trusted you, yes. That's the only answer I can give you. Sarah left, walked through the base, past soldiers who didn't know her, didn't know what she'd done, didn't know that she'd fought a mountain and an enemy and her own command and won. She made it to the medical tent, let them treat her shoulder, separated a chromioclavicular joint, torn ligaments, mild rotator cuff damage, 6 to 8 weeks recovery minimum. They gave her painkillers. She took them this time. Wanted to not feel for a while. Wanted the pain to stop, just for a few hours. Mac was in surgery, critical but stable. They'd save the leg. Probably. Maybe. Even if they did, he'd never fly again. His war was over. 28 years of service, ending in a cave in Afghanistan because someone had decided he was expendable. Sarah sat in the recovery room, alone, tried to process everything, failed. It was too much, too big, too overwhelming. She'd survived. She should be happy, should be grateful, should be celebrating. Instead, she just felt empty and angry. Very, very angry. Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Bethesda, Maryland. A world away from Afghanistan. A lifetime away from that mountain. Mac's room overlooked the parking lot. Not much of a view, but better than a cave. Better than being dead. Sarah visited every week. Flew in from Fort Campbell where she'd been reassigned after medical clearance. Back to training units. Back to routine missions. Back to nothing dangerous. Nothing real. Nothing that mattered. Command didn't trust her anymore. Didn't trust that she'd follow orders without question. Didn't trust that she'd accept acceptable losses as an acceptable answer. They were right not to trust her. Mac was awake when she entered, alert. The leg was saved. Physical therapy was brutal, but he was making progress. Could walk with a cane now. Short distances. Enough. Retirement papers were filed. He'd be out in 3 months. Full pension. Medical benefits. The standard package for someone who'd given the military 30 years of his life. You didn't have to come, Mac said. His voice was stronger now, almost back to normal. Yeah, I did. Sarah pulled up a chair, sat. They've been having this same conversation for 3 months. It was a ritual now, a comfortable routine in a world that no longer made sense. How's flight training? Boring, routine, safe. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Everything command wants. I fly students around, teach them procedures, make sure they don't crash. It's fine. You hate it. I hate it. No point lying. Mac knew her too well. I hate that they grounded me from combat ops. I hate that every time I file a flight plan, some officer reviews it to make sure I'm not going off mission. I hate that I'm being treated like a problem instead of a pilot who saved her crew. Mac nodded. I got a call last week from a guy, didn't give his name, said he'd heard about what happened, about what we did, about the questions we asked. He paused. Said there are people who pay attention to soldiers like us, soldiers who don't accept acceptable losses as an answer. Sarah's pulse quickened. What kind of people? The kind who think some missions shouldn't happen, some orders shouldn't be followed, some sacrifices are too much. Mac looked at her. He asked if I was interested, told him I'm retired, don't want any more trouble. But he said they're always looking for pilots, specifically pilots who've proven they won't abandon their crew, who'll fight when everyone says to quit, who'll question orders when the orders are wrong. What did you tell him? Told him to call you. Max smiled. Because I know you, Sarah. I know you're not going to let this go. You're going to ask questions, push back, make trouble. Is that a bad thing? No, it's the best thing. He reached out, took her hand. Someone needs to make trouble. Someone needs to ask if the mission is worth the cost. And if it's not, someone needs to say no. I can't just say no. I'm still in the military for another 3 years. For now, Mac's smile widened. But that's not forever. And when you're out, when you don't have to follow orders anymore, what are you going to do? Sarah thought about the cave, the cold, the Taliban, the drone operator who'd almost left her to die, the colonel who'd told her it was all for the greater good, the machine that turned human beings into statistics and called it operational necessity. She thought about other pilots, other soldiers, other people who might be flying into traps right now, who might be expendable, who might die because someone decided the mission was more important than their lives. I'm going to find those people, Sarah said, the ones who pay attention, the ones who give a damn, and I'm going to make sure what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. That's a dangerous road. I've been down worse, Sarah stood, but first I need to finish my contract. Play nice. Make them think I've moved on. Make them think I've accepted it. And then I'm going to war, a different kind of war, against people who think soldiers are chess pieces, against a system that calls death acceptable and betrayal operational necessity. She looked at Mac. You gave me a lot, skills, knowledge, experience, but the most important thing you gave me, you showed me that some orders are wrong, and when they're wrong, you fight back. Mac nodded slowly. Just be careful. The people you're going after, they're very good at making problems disappear. Then I'll be better at not disappearing. Sarah moved to the door, stopped. Mac, thank you for everything, for teaching me to fly, for keeping me alive, for showing me what it means to be a soldier. Thank me by staying alive, Valkyrie. That's all I ask. She smiled, the first real smile since the mountain. That's what I do best. 6 months later, Sarah's apartment in Nashville, off base, civilian neighborhood. First time in her military career she'd chosen to live away from other soldiers, away from the culture, away from the machine. She'd separated from the service 2 months early, bought out her remaining contract time using the disability settlement from her shoulder injury. Honorable discharge, full benefits, the clean break she'd needed. The phone rang at 2100 hours. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then something made her pick up. Captain Vance? A man's voice. Calm, professional, careful. It's just Sarah now, not a captain anymore, not in the army. We know, that's why we're calling. A pause. We've been watching you. Afghanistan, the questions you asked, the reports you filed, the trouble you made, the way you refused to accept the official story. Who's we? People who believe in accountability. People who think soldiers deserve better than being used as bait. People who want to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen again. Another pause. We could use someone like you, someone who knows how the system works, how to fly, how to fight, how to survive, how to ask the right questions. What are you offering? A chance to make a difference, to protect soldiers from their own command when command makes the wrong call, to say no when the mission is wrong, to hold people accountable when they treat American lives as acceptable losses. The voice hardened slightly. And if you're interested, to make the people responsible for those missions very, very uncomfortable. Sarah looked out her window, at Nashville, at civilian life, at normalcy, at the quiet existence she could have if she wanted it. Safe, predictable, empty. Then she thought about the Hindu Kush, about Mac, about the colonel who'd told her it was all necessary, about other pilots who might be getting similar briefings right now, who might be flying into similar traps, who might die because someone thought they were expendable. I'm interested. Good. We'll be in touch with details. Welcome to the Oath Keepers, Sarah. We've been waiting for someone like you for a long time. The line went dead. Sarah set down the phone. Looked at the photo on her desk, her and Mac beside the Black Hawk, before everything went to hell, when she'd still believed in the mission, still trusted command, still thought the system worked. She'd survived the mountain, survived betrayal, survived the realization that the people she'd trusted to value her life didn't. Now she was going to change the system, one mission at a time, one soldier at a time, one fight at a time. The mountain had tried to kill her and failed. Now she was going to show them what happened when you left a Valkyrie for dead. She was going to become the thing that haunted the officers who made those calls. The ghost that questioned every mission. The voice that said no when no one else would. She was going to make them regret teaching her to survive. And God help anyone who got in her way.